You know, normally an F is a bad grade to get, right? Mom and dad are unhappy. You may be on the verge of flunking out, and it's an awful thing. However, an F code, when it pertains to Thunderbirds, is something very different. So today's episode is entitled An F is a Beautiful Thing on Thunderbird Garage.
Thunderbird Garage, where the classics come alive. 57 Magic Man, it's more than just a drive. Thunderbird Garage, let the good times thrive. Ooh.
So this bronze F code is really a special car. And the F code was the designation that Ford provided in their Thunderbirds as an option for the supercharger setup. So there's a McCulloch supercharger that's connected to a plenum over a carburetor. And this engine, which was the most powerful engine you could get in a 57 Thunderbird, supposedly, according to Ford, put out 300 horsepower. According to some dyno tests that others put the car through, it was probably closer to 350 to 400 horsepower. I've recently driven this today, and what a special opportunity that was. And it's got a ton of power. But the car is so rare in that they produced roughly 196 to 211. The figures are not clear on the number of F codes they produce, but today only a handful survive. And this is a really well-restored version of that. And it's a piece of history. And it is in essence a supercar from the late 50s. You think about the supercars and the Lamborghinis of the 80s and 90s and of today. Well, back in 1957, having something that put out between 300 and 400 horsepower, and actually one version was clocked at 138 miles per hour. It was the fastest production car clocked in 1957. Yeah, that's supercar territory. So once you get behind the wheel of the Thunderbird and you get it rolling, you'll find that the F code manual steering lightens up as it's moving, and then you remember you're driving a 3-speed with an H pattern. And I found this car really has a ton of power, especially in second gear. It wants to live there. It wants the supercharger to rev up. But I was impressed with the braking power. It really felt far more modern than I expected, and just a ton of surge when you step on the gas, especially when you're in second gear. So as I came back to Thunderbird Garage, I needed a moment or two just to process what I had been through to kind of sum it up for you folks. What was it like? Amazing. I was in the presence of a piece of artwork. To call it a car is sort of like to call a Picasso or a Rembrandt. Yeah, it's a nice painting like my kid did. No, it's way more than that. I was kind of blown away at some of the technology. The Paxton McCulloch supercharger with that plenum over a special carb, and the upside down fuel filter setup that's sort of kind of pressurized to deal with that supercharger setup. And then the stampings on the engine from just an amazing restoration. All of that was just wild. And then to drive it and to feel the power, it wants to rev up. And it felt very modern. Once you get rolling, it felt incredibly easy to drive. And it just wants to rev up. It wants you to rev it up in second gear to unleash the power and to spool up the supercharger so it gets going. And then finally, the owner, I gotta call him out. He's just a really nice and easygoing guy. He had given me a cup of coffee. I sort of live on caffeine. And I was shooting some video, and then he was like, "Curt, bring your coffee. We'll go for a ride and then you can drive." And I was like, "I'm not bringing the cup of coffee in the car." I said, "What if I spill it?" And he was like, "It's just a car." That's someone who's got their priorities right. I still don't have the courage to bring a cup of coffee in an F code, but besides that, it's really the spirit of great collectors and someone who's preserving this piece of history for generations, but doesn't let it go to his head. That's awesome. That's the spirit of what we do, and that is this episode of Thunderbird Garage.